I pushed through the revolving doors of the Sentinel Security Services building. Standing 20 stories high in downtown Chicago, my new workplace loomed before me. The lobby stretched out ahead, all sleek minimalism and polished marble. Nearly 11 p.m. at this hour. The place sat empty. My footsteps echoed as I approached the security desk. "Wilson, you're punctual." Michael Thompson kept his eyes on his computer as I walked up. I'd encountered him just once before during my interview, but that permanent scowl of his proved impossible to forget. "Yes, sir." Ready for my inaugural shift. His grey eyes finally lifted to meet mine, revealing nothing. The night shift demands exact protocol adherence. From a drawer, he produced a typed sheet and slid it across the desk. "These constitute the rules. Commit them to memory." I grabbed the paper and scanned the list with mounting confusion. Rule 1. Keep the security desk clear of personal effects. Rule 2. Maintain continuous observation of all security feeds. Rule 3. Should the man in the hat materialize on monitor 3 at midnight, refrain from any communication attempts. Rule 4. If knocking occurs at the security office door between 1 a.m. and 4 a.m., do not open it. Rule 5. When an unauthorized person gains entry, apprehend them without engaging in dialogue. Rule 6. If monitor 6 activates spontaneously, power it down immediately. Rule 7. Conduct a 4th-floor patrol at precisely 3:30 a.m. Rule 8. Should the red alarm light engage, take cover beneath the desk until it shifts to green. I chuckled, anticipating Michael's smile. None came. This qualifies as some sort of initiation, right? Scare tactics for the newcomer. Standard operating procedure, Michael stated flatly. The office lies down that corridor, first doorway on the right. Your shift concludes at 7 a.m. He rose, collecting his briefcase. Follow those rules precisely, Wilson. But what's with these bizarre? Precisely, he interrupted, emphasizing the word. I watched his rigid back as he headed for the exit. Through the revolving door he pushed, departing and stranding me alone in the lobby. The security office proved more cramped than anticipated, barely accommodating a desk with computer setup, a corner mini fridge, and a worn office chair. 8 monitors lined the wall above the desk, each presenting different building areas. Monitor 1 displayed the main lobby. Monitor 2 captured the exterior doors. Monitor 3 revealed an empty corridor apparently leading to conference rooms. The remaining monitors showed assorted hallways, a break room, and what appeared to be basement storage. I settled into the squeaking chair and positioned the rule sheet on the desk. The office felt stuffy, prompting me to loosen my tie. The security uniform wasn't uncomfortable exactly, but that stiff collar bothered me. First night, here we go, I muttered, checking the computer screen's time display. 10:58 p.m. I began cycling through each monitor. The building appeared utterly deserted. No cleaning personnel, no overtime workers, just vacant corridors and darkened rooms. Everything seemed normal, if exceptionally quiet. Leaning back, I noticed a desk drawer slightly ajar. Pulling it open wider revealed some pens, paper clips, and a crumpled piece of notebook paper. Curiosity trumped my initial instinct to ignore it. I smoothed the paper on the desk. The handwriting appeared messy and rushed, as though penned in desperation. They're not merely rules, they're survival instructions. I flipped the paper seeking more, but found only that single dramatic sentence. Very amusing, I announced, shoving the note back into the drawer. Clearly some fellow guard was attempting to haze me. New guy hazing hardly qualified as original. The next hour I spent examining the building's layout on the security computer. Sentinel Security Services occupied the ground floor while various companies leased the upper levels. The building specs revealed nothing unusual. Standard fire exits, elevator mechanisms, utility rooms. Nothing remarkable. By 11:45 p.m., I'd completed another monitor sweep. Everything remained quiet. Excessively quiet, actually. In most buildings, night security meant occasional cleaning crews or late workers. Here, the silence was absolute. I found myself revisiting the rules, pausing at Rule 3. The man in the hat. What kind of regulations warned about specific individuals appearing at specific times? I dismissed it as office humor, shaking my head. The computer clock read 11:58 p.m. A nervous anticipation crept over me as I watched monitor 3. The hallway appeared empty, overhead lights casting a bluish glow on the polished floor. This is ridiculous, I assured myself. But I kept watching anyway. 11:59 p.m. I leaned closer to monitor 3, eyes fixed on that vacant corridor. Despite my certainty that nothing would happen, nervousness persisted. The digital clock flipped to 12 o'clock. Monitor 3 glitched. Just once, a quick image distortion. When it cleared, a figure occupied the previously empty hallway. A man in dark suit and hat stood in the corridor's center. His face remained partially obscured by the hat, but I could discern his direct gaze at the camera. At me. My mouth went dry. I blinked hard, expecting the image to change, but the man remained motionless. I grabbed the rule sheet again, rereading Rule 3 with newfound comprehension. If the man in the hat appears on monitor 3 at midnight, do not attempt to communicate with him. I pushed back from the desk, suddenly feeling profoundly alone in this vast, silent building. The screen's figure didn't move, didn't blink, just maintained that camera stare. Suddenly, Michael's warning didn't seem like a joke anymore. That man on monitor 3 remained utterly motionless, never blinking, never performing any of those unconscious movements humans naturally make. He simply stood there, fixing the camera with an intensity that made my skin crawl. I checked the time. 12:03 a.m. I studied the screen more closely, examining his features. The hat shadowed most of his face, but I could distinguish a sharp jawline and thin lips pressed firmly together. His suit appeared antiquated, the kind featuring wide lapels that had been out of style for decades. The longer I observed, the more unsettling it became. How did he know to look directly at the camera? And how had he materialized in a locked, empty building without tripping any alarms? I glanced again at the rule sheet. Rule 3 confronted me: if the man in the hat appears on monitor 3 at midnight, do not attempt to communicate with him. What did that even entail? How would one communicate with someone through a security monitor? I searched the desk area for a microphone or speaker system but found nothing. Just the standard keyboard, mouse, and the steady hum of the computer tower beneath. At 12:10 a.m., I decided to check the building's entry logs. Navigating through the security system's menu, I accessed the access records. According to the system, nobody had entered or departed since the cleaning crew left at 9:45 p.m. Yet there he stood. When I looked back at monitor 3, the man had tilted his head slightly, as if curious about my activities. My chair squeaked against the floor as I instinctively pushed back from the desk, creating distance between myself and something that defied possibility. The digital clock advanced to 12:15 a.m. Between one blink and the next, the man vanished. Monitor 3's hallway stood empty again, showing no evidence anyone had ever been there. I rewound the footage, examining it in slow motion. One frame captured the man standing perfectly still, the very next frame showed him gone. No motion blur, no door opening, just present then absent. What the hell? I muttered, replaying the footage repeatedly with identical results. I rose, needing movement, needing something besides staring at monitors and questioning my sanity. As I pushed my chair back, my knee connected sharply with the desk's underside. The hollow sound drew my attention. I bent to examine the desk more thoroughly. Running my fingers along the bottom surface, I detected a subtle seam inconsistent with the rest of the construction. Pressing against it released a small panel, revealing a hidden compartment built into the desk's underside. Inside lay a small spiral-bound notebook with a black cover. The page edges showed wear, some corners dog-eared. I retrieved it and opened it on the desk. The handwriting inside appeared tight and hurried, filling pages with observations, diagrams, and what resembled timestamps. On the inside cover, a name was written, Sarah Mitchell. I flipped through initial pages, growing increasingly intrigued as I read. Day 1. The rules seem absurd. Michael wouldn't explain any. Said it wasn't his job to hold my hand. Fine, whatever. Day 3. The man in the hat appeared on monitor 3 exactly at midnight. He remained for 15 minutes, then vanished. No entry logs, nothing on exterior cameras. How is this possible? Day 7. The man in the hat watches to ensure you're at your post. I tested it by leaving the room at 11:59. When I returned at 12:05, he faced the door instead of the camera. He knew I'd left. I flipped forward several pages, encountering more frantic entries. Day 12. The clown feeds on fear. Don't look at it. I made that mistake. Turned off monitor 6 too late. Heard it in the vent all night. I closed the notebook and checked the monitors again. Everything appeared normal. Empty hallways, dark offices, but the building now felt different, as though it was watching me back. The digital clock showed 1:28 a.m. I reopened the notebook, searching entries for anything about upcoming events. Several pages mention knocking. The knocking starts at 1:30. Do not open the door. She isn't human. I saw Parker answer it on his last night. The security footage showed him being dragged down the hall by something with too many limbs. 2 minutes later, right on schedule, I heard it. 3 sharp raps on the office door. I froze, staring at the door's small window. The hallway outside was dark, and I'd seen no movement on the monitors when the knocks came. I remembered Rule 4, do not open the security office door if you hear knocking between 1 a.m. and 4 a.m. The knocking resumed, louder this time, more insistent. 5 rapid knocks in succession. I remained seated, gripping my chair's armrests. Both the rule sheet and Sarah's notebook warned against answering. Whatever lurked out there wasn't something I wanted to encounter. The knocking escalated into pounding that shook the door in its frame. It sounded less like knuckles now and more like someone using their entire fist, or perhaps something harder than flesh and bone. Then, in the door's small rectangular window, a face materialized. A woman, or something wearing a woman's appearance. Her face was pale with dark hair falling past her cheeks. But her smile stretched impossibly wide, extending beyond the mouth's natural corners. Her teeth gleamed in the low light, too numerous and too sharp. She pressed her face closer to the glass, that impossible smile widening further. I could now see her eyes were equally wrong, completely black with no visible whites or irises. I sat perfectly still, barely breathing, as she pressed her palm against the glass. The window began to fog, steam rising from her hand as though her skin burned at impossible temperatures. She dragged her fingers down the glass, leaving 5 steaming trails. The pounding stopped. The face vanished from the window. On monitor 1, which showed the main lobby, I caught a glimpse of a dark shape moving with unnatural speed toward the stairwell before disappearing from view. My hand shook as I picked up Sarah's notebook again. They test you. Each rule broken weakens the barriers. The building was constructed to contain them, but they've learned the weak points. The rules aren't for our safety. They're containment procedures. Sentinel doesn't guard the building. We guard what's inside it. Another entry caught my eye. I've mapped their appearances. The patterns are consistent. Man in hat at midnight, knocking at 1:30, red light at 4:15. Once you understand the patterns, you can predict them. Maybe even use that against them. I checked all monitors again, searching for any other abnormalities. Everything seemed quiet for now. The handprint on the door's window was already fading, the glass returning to normal as if nothing had occurred. The digital clock showed 2:08 a.m. I pulled the rule sheet closer, reviewing the remaining items. I still had to patrol the 4th floor at 3:30 a.m. according to Rule 7. The thought of leaving the security office after what I'd just witnessed made my stomach churn, but staying meant following the rules exactly. At 2:10 a.m., movement on monitor 2 caught my attention. The exterior door, which should have been locked, swung open slowly. A man in dark clothing stepped into the lobby, moving deliberately and slowly. He turned his face toward the camera, revealing hollow cheeks and deep-set eyes. Rule 5 sprang to mind: if an unauthorized individual enters the building, detain them without conversation. I grabbed the security baton from its wall holder and headed for the door, pausing on the knob for just a second before pulling it open. I rushed to intercept the suspicious man, remembering Rule 5. The lobby was deathly quiet as I confronted the intruder, a thin man with hollow cheeks wearing a black overcoat. "You need to come with me," I stated, avoiding conversation as instructed. The man tilted his head in an unnatural manner. "The red light comes for all new guards," he whispered before transforming into dark smoke that dispersed into the air vents. Frightened, I retreated to the security desk where Monitor 6 had suddenly activated, displaying the building's basement storage room. A clown with white makeup and a red smile stood directly before the camera. I quickly powered down the monitor, following Rule 6. Immediately, childlike giggling echoed through the air ducts, followed by scratching against the office walls. I sat completely motionless, ignoring the noises as instructed. After 10 long minutes, the sound ceased. I reactivated Monitor 6. The basement stood empty. I found another of Sarah's notes: "I saw what happens to those who break Rule 7. Don't enter the break room no matter what you hear inside." I grabbed my security baton and hurried from the office, rushing down the hallway toward the lobby. Rule 5 was clear. If an unauthorized individual enters the building, detain them without conversation. After what I'd witnessed with the woman at the door, following the rules seemed my only survival option. The lobby stretched vast and silent before me. The marble floor gleamed under the dim emergency lights. The man stood near the lobby's center, completely motionless. He hadn't moved since I'd spotted him on the monitor. In person, he looked even stranger. His face was exceptionally thin with hollow cheeks. The black overcoat he wore hung too large for his gaunt frame. His skin was so pale he appeared not to have seen sunlight in years. "You need to come with me," I said, keeping my voice firm while avoiding additional conversation as the rules instructed. The man neither advanced nor retreated. Instead, he tilted his head at an impossible angle, too far to one side, as though his neck contained extra joints. His eyes locked onto mine with an intensity that made me want to look away. "The red light comes for all new guards," he whispered. His voice was unexpectedly quiet but clear, carrying an old-fashioned lilt reminiscent of someone from a black and white film. The word sent a chill through me, especially after reading about the red light in Sarah's notebook. Before I could react, the man's outline began to blur. His edges seemed to dissolve, the boundary between him and the air fading away. Then his body fragmented into wisps of dark smoke. The cloud hung momentarily in the air, still vaguely human-shaped, before flowing upward toward the ceiling. The smoke disappeared into an air vent, leaving me alone in the lobby. I stood frozen, the baton now loose in my hand. My mind struggled to process what I'd just witnessed. People don't dissolve into smoke. That's impossible. Yet, after the man in the hat and the woman at the door, I was running out of rational explanations. The lobby suddenly felt exposed. Whatever things inhabited this building, I was standing in the open. I backed toward the hallway, scanning every shadow, every corner. Only when I reached the corridor entrance did I turn and hurry back to the security office. I shut the door behind me, leaning against it momentarily as I tried to steady my breathing. The monitors illuminated the dark office, each screen showing empty corridors and rooms, except for one. Monitor 6 had activated on its own. The screen displayed the basement storage room with its concrete floor and metal shelving units stacked with boxes and maintenance supplies. Standing directly before the camera was a clown. Not a normal circus clown. This one wore cracked white makeup revealing patches of grey skin underneath. Its smile was painted red, stretching from ear to ear in an unnervingly fake expression. The costume it wore might once have been colourful, but now appeared faded and stained, hanging in tatters around its thin frame. It stared directly into the camera, unblinking. Its head tilted at the same unnatural angle as the man in the lobby. One hand slowly lifted, fingers unnaturally long, reaching toward the camera lens. Rule 6 flashed in my mind: if Monitor 6 activates on its own, turn it off immediately. I lunged for the control panel and hit the power button for Monitor 6. The screen went black, leaving that section of the wall dark. For a second, nothing happened. Then I heard it, a high-pitched giggle emanating from the ceiling air vent. The sound was childlike yet wrong, like an adult poorly imitating a child's laugh. The sound traveled through the ducts, sometimes distant, sometimes directly above me. The giggling was accompanied by scratching against the office walls. Slow, deliberate scratches that circled the room's perimeter, as if something was dragging sharp nails along the drywall just on the other side. I remembered Sarah's note about the clown. The clown feeds on fear. Don't look at it. I made that mistake. Turned off Monitor 6 too late. Heard it in the vent all night. I sat down in the office chair, forcing myself to remain still. The scratching continued, moving from wall to wall, occasionally pausing before resuming. The giggling came in bursts, sometimes fading to whispers I couldn't quite discern. My instinct was to react, to locate the source, to understand what was happening. But the rules in Sarah's notes were clear. Engaging with these entities only worsened things. So I kept my eyes on the remaining active monitors and tried to ignore the sounds. 10 minutes passed like this, though it felt like hours. The scratching grew more frantic at times, as if whatever made the noise was frustrated by my lack of response. The giggling turned to soft sobbing, then back to laughter. I kept my breathing steady and my body motionless. Eventually, the sounds faded away. The scratching stopped first, followed by the last traces of that unsettling giggle. The ensuing silence felt almost as heavy as the sounds had been. I waited another 5 minutes before reaching for the control panel again. I reactivated Monitor 6. The basement storage room appeared on screen, completely empty. No sign of the clown or any disturbance. The boxes and shelves stood in the same positions as before, undisturbed. My hands shook as I leaned back in the chair. The night was only half over, and I'd already encountered 3 entities. The man in the hat, the woman at the door, and now the clown, not to mention the man who turned to smoke in the lobby. I reached for Sarah's notebook again, hoping to find more information that might help me survive until morning. As I picked it up, a loose page fell out, dropping to the floor. I bent down to retrieve it, recognizing Sarah's handwriting immediately, though this note appeared written with more urgency than the others. I saw what happens to those who break Rule 7. Don't enter the break room, no matter what you hear inside. I checked the rules sheet again. Rule 7. Complete a patrol of the 4th floor at 3:30 a.m. precisely. I glanced at the clock. 2:43 a.m. I still had some time before needing to conduct the patrol, but the warning about the break room sent another chill through me. What had Sarah seen? And why specifically warn about the break room? I flipped through more pages of her notebook, seeking answers, trying to prepare myself for whatever would come next in this nightmare shift. I took one last look at the office clock. 3:28 a.m. time for the patrol mentioned in Rule 7. The thought of leaving the safe office made my mouth go dry. After everything I'd already witnessed tonight, the man in the hat, the woman with the impossible smile, the clown in the basement, and the man who turned to smoke, the last thing I wanted was to walk the building's hallways alone. But breaking the rules seemed even more dangerous. I grabbed my flashlight and the security baton, though I doubted either would prove useful against the things in this building. Before leaving, I tucked Sarah's notebook into my back pocket. Her warnings had already proven accurate, and I wasn't about to leave such crucial information behind. The hallway outside the security office stretched empty and quiet before me. My footsteps echoed against the tile floor as I walked to the elevator. I pressed the up button and waited, constantly glancing over my shoulder. The soft ping of the arriving elevator made me jump. I stepped inside and pushed the button for the 4th floor. The doors closed with a soft sound, leaving me in the small metal box. As the elevator ascended, I realized how trapped I was. If anything happened, I had nowhere to run. The numbers illuminated one by one above the doors. 1, 2, 3. Each floor passing with agonizing slowness. The elevator felt colder than normal, my breath appearing in small clouds before my face. When the display changed to 4, the elevator shuddered slightly before stopping. For a moment, I considered staying inside, pushing the lobby button, and making a run for it. But Sarah's notes and everything I'd seen convinced me that breaking the rules would only worsen things. The doors opened, revealing the 4th floor hallway. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, one of them flickering halfway down the hall. The floor housed several law offices, their glass doors dark and reception areas empty for the night. I stepped out of the elevator and the doors closed behind me. The quiet up here felt different, heavier, as if something was wrong. I began my patrol, moving down the hallway, checking that office doors were locked and nothing seemed amiss. About halfway down the hall, I passed the break room. The door was closed with a small rectangular window just like the one in the security office. I remembered Sarah's warning clearly, don't enter the break room no matter what you hear inside. I planned to walk right past it, but something stopped me in my tracks. Help! Someone please help me. The voice came from inside the break room. My voice. Not similar, identical. The same pitch, the same speech rhythm, the same slight Midwestern accent I'd never been able to shake. This isn't happening, I whispered to myself, stepping back from the door. Please, I'm trapped in here. Help me, my voice called out again, more desperate this time. My mind raced for explanations. Maybe it was like the woman at the door, something that could mimic human appearances and sounds. Or maybe it was some kind of recording, though I couldn't imagine how anyone would have samples of my voice. Every instinct told me to walk away, but I found myself moving closer to the door. Sarah's warning kept playing in my head, but my curiosity and a strange concern for what sounded exactly like myself overrode my caution. Just one quick look, I reasoned. I won't go inside. I leaned toward the small window, my fingers gripping the door handle. Slowly, I pushed it open just enough to peek inside. What I saw made me stumble backward, my stomach lurching violently. On the break room table sat my head. Not a replica, not something that looked like me. My actual head, severed at the neck, yet somehow still alive. My eyes blinked and looked around the room in panic. The mouth opened and closed, forming words I couldn't hear through the ringing in my ears. Above the table, hanging from the ceiling by thick black cords that resembled veins more than rope, hung the rest of my body. The limbs jerked randomly, fingers grasping at nothing, legs kicking weakly as if trying to run. I slammed the door shut and backed away, my back hitting the opposite hallway wall. Bile rose in my throat, and I fought the urge to vomit. That couldn't be real. It couldn't. Yet it had looked so real, down to the small scar on my chin from a childhood accident and the freckle on my right earlobe. I turned and ran down the hallway toward the elevator, no longer caring about completing my patrol properly. All I wanted was to return to the security office where at least I understood the rules. The elevator seemed to take forever to arrive. When it finally did, I practically fell inside and repeatedly hit the lobby button. As the doors closed, I caught a glimpse of movement at the far end of the hallway. A dark thing seemed to emerge from the break room door. The door shut before I could see it clearly, and I was grateful for that. Back in the lobby, I ran to the security office and locked the door behind me. My hand shook as I dropped into the chair, the room spinning slightly around me. I pulled out Sarah's notebook and began rapidly flipping through pages, searching for anything about the break room or what I'd just witnessed. Several pages in, I found an entry dated about 3 weeks ago. The break room is where they show you your future, not what will happen. What could happen if you keep breaking the rules? I saw myself drowning in black liquid that poured from the ceiling vents. Yesterday, I saw myself with glass shards embedded in my skin, blinded and crawling across the floor. Today, I saw myself split in half from head to navel, still conscious somehow, my organs visible and pulsing. They're getting worse, more detailed, more painful. I think they're running out of patience with me. The next page contained what appeared to be her final entry. The handwriting more rushed and uneven than before. They show you your possible future if you keep breaking rules. I've seen my death 3 different ways now. I don't think I'll survive another night. I'm close to figuring it out, though. The symbols in the basement, the patterns of their appearances, it all connects. There's a way out of this. Not just the building, but the cycle. If you're reading this and I'm gone, I either found the escape or became one of them. Don't make my mistakes. Follow the rules until you understand them. Then you can break them properly. I stared at the page, trying to process what Sarah meant. Symbols in the basement, patterns. Before I could search for more information, I noticed the time. The digital clock on the desk read for 14 a.m. Roulette flashed in my mind. If the red alarm light activates, hide under the desk immediately. As if on cue, at exactly 15 a.m., a red light on the alarm panel began to pulse. The air in the room seemed to thicken, making breathing difficult. A low buzz emanated from somewhere deep in the building, vibrating through the floor and up into the desk. I didn't hesitate. I dove under the desk, making myself as small as possible in the knee space. I pulled my knees to my chest and tried to control my breathing, which suddenly seemed too loud in the silence. The buzzing grew louder, and the red light pulsed faster. Then I heard it. Footsteps in the hallway outside. Heavy, deliberate steps that didn't sound human. There was a peculiar dragging quality to them, as if whatever was walking was pulling something behind it or struggling to lift its feet properly. The footsteps stopped just outside the security office door. The handle turned slowly, metal scraping against metal as the door swung open. I hid under the desk, legs pulled tight to my chest as the security office door opened with a creak. Those footsteps made my skin crawl. Too heavy for a person, with a wet dragging sound like something being pulled across the floor. Each step produced a soft squish followed by a scrape. A smell hit me so strongly I had to cover my mouth to suppress gagging. It was awful. Rotting meat mixed with sulfur and something else I couldn't identify. Something chemical and wrong. The air was thick with it, making each breath through my fingers taste disgusting. The footsteps slowly moved around the office, circling the desk. I pushed myself deeper into the shadows, trying to make myself as small as possible. My back ached from sitting awkwardly, but I didn't dare move. The red light kept pulsing through the room, washing everything in crimson waves that made the shadows under the desk shift and change. Something knocked over a cup on the desk above me. I heard liquid splash onto the floor, followed by a low, wet sound, like a tongue licking up the spilled coffee. Then came a deep rumbling noise that might have been a pleased groan. Long discolored fingers with cracked black nails suddenly grabbed the edge of the desk above me. The nails were thick and curved, more like claws than human nails. The skin was patchy grey and yellow with areas that looked slick and others that seemed dry and flaky. Dark veins showed clearly underneath. I held my breath, certain that if I made even the slightest noise, those fingers would reach down and find me. My lungs started burning, but I stayed still, counting in my head to control the panic building inside me. The thing in the room breathed in a ragged, wet manner, like someone with fluid in their lungs. Each exhalation ended with a bubbling rattle that evoked drowning. It moved around the office, opening drawers and shuffling papers. Something heavy hit the wall by the door. Every few minutes, it would stop and emit a low, guttural sound, somewhere between a growl and a question. The sound seemed to vibrate in my head, making my teeth ache and my vision blur momentarily. The minutes felt endless. My cramped legs progressed from painful to numb. Sweat ran down my back, even though the room had grown strangely cold. I stared at my watch, tracking the slow passage of time. 5 minutes, 10, 15. At one point, the thing bent down and I glimpsed what looked like a shoulder and part of a head. The skin was burned and blackened with cracks revealing pulsing red tissue underneath. I closed my eyes, not wanting to see more. 20 minutes passed like this, the longest 20 minutes of my life. Just when I thought I couldn't endure the strain any longer, the red pulsing light turned green. The change happened immediately. The creature emitted what sounded like a disappointed sigh. The fingers released the desk, leaving behind a dark, oily stain. The footsteps moved away, each one sounding less solid than the last. The door closed with a soft click. I waited 5 more minutes before daring to move, counting each second. When I finally crawled out from my hiding place, every joint in my body ached. My legs had fallen asleep and I experienced pins and needles as blood flow resumed. I leaned on the desk for support, breathing deeply now that the foul smell had mostly dissipated. The office looked exactly as I'd left it, except for the coffee spill on the floor and the black stain on the desk where those fingers had gripped. I touched it carefully. It felt cold and sticky, like oil mixed with ash. When I pulled my finger away, it left a dark mark that required several tissues to clean off. I checked all the monitors. Each screen displayed empty hallways and rooms. Whatever had been in the office with me wasn't on any of the cameras now. I sat in the chair, my body shaking with fear and exhaustion. For the remainder of my shift, I stayed alert, checking the monitors repeatedly. I searched through Sarah's notebook again, looking for anything about the red light and what accompanied it, but found nothing specific. Maybe she never lived long enough to write it down. At 5:58 a.m., I heard the main entrance opening. Monitor 1 showed a man entering the lobby, stocky build, dark hair with some grey at the sides, wearing the same Sentinel security uniform I had on. He moved like someone accustomed to being careful. I felt immense relief. My shift was almost over. I'd made it through the night. At exactly 6:05 a.m., someone knocked at the security office door. I checked the camera before opening it. Definitely human, definitely wearing the proper uniform. "Come in," I called, my voice rough from disuse. The door opened to reveal my replacement. Up close, I could see the dark circles under his eyes and a prominent scar running across his right cheek. His eyes were sharp, sizing me up as he looked me over. "You made it," he said, sounding genuinely surprised. "Most don't last the first night." "I'm James Wilson," I said, extending my hand. Robert Martinez, he replied, shaking it firmly. Been on night shift for 3 years now. I gathered my things, including Sarah's notebook, which I tucked securely into my jacket pocket. As I handed over the security keys, Robert noticed my hand trembling slightly. First night jitters never really go away, he said with a grim smile. You look like you could use some coffee. I nodded and thanked him, and he led me to the lobby where someone had set up a small coffee cart. The morning cleaning crew was already working, nodding to us as we passed. Everything looked so normal with daylight streaming through the large windows. Nothing revealed what had transpired during the night. Robert poured 2 cups from a thermos he'd brought. Company coffee tastes like piss, he explained. I bring my own. We sat on a bench near the entrance. Drinking coffee while people began arriving for the morning felt surreal after what I'd experienced. So, you saw it? Robert said after a few sips. It wasn't a question. Saw what? I asked cautiously. Whatever comes with the red light. Different for everyone, they say, but always something that leaves that black _ behind. He nodded toward my hand where a faint dark smudge remained despite my attempts to clean it off. I hesitated, then decided on honesty. I didn't really see it clearly, just fingers, part of what might have been a shoulder. Burned skin with red underneath. Robert nodded. Some say it's what's left of the night guards who broke the rules. Others think it's something that was here long before the building. He took another sip of his coffee. Truth is, guard security isn't guarding the building. We're containing what's inside it. What is inside it? I asked. This place was built over something old, Robert said, lowering his voice despite the growing noise of the day staff arriving. Something that wants out. The rules keep them in check. I pulled out the rule sheet Michael had given me the night before. These rules. Those are just the basics. There are more depending on what night it is, what floor you're on. He eyed me carefully. You found her notebook, didn't you? Sarah's. I tensed. How did you know about that? Because she showed it to me once about a week before she disappeared. Said she was figuring out patterns, connections. Robert stared into his coffee. Smart woman. Too smart for her own good, maybe. What happened to her? I asked. Nobody knows for sure. She just didn't show up for her shift one night. Company line is she quit without notice. He looked up at me. But the night before she told me she'd found something in the basement. Something about symbols. I remember the last entry I'd read in her notebook. The symbols in the basement, the patterns of their appearances. It all connects. There's a way out of this. You're coming back tonight, aren't you? Robert asked suddenly. The question caught me off guard. After everything I'd experienced, the logical answer should have been no. I should run as far from this building as possible and never look back. But the mystery of what happened to Sarah, the strange things I'd witnessed, the hint about symbols and patterns, it all pulled me in. Yes, I said, surprising myself with how certain I felt. I'm coming back. Robert nodded, something like respect showing in his tired eyes. Bring chalk, he said, finishing his coffee and standing up. White chalk. You might need it. As I walked out of the building into the bright morning sun, I already knew I'd return when darkness fell. I had Sarah's notes, new information from Robert, and I was determined to learn what had happened to the woman whose warnings had kept me alive through the night. The morning sun did nothing to diminish the reality of last night's horrors. As I walked back to my apartment, I kept replaying all the impossible things I'd witnessed. The man in the hat, the woman with too many teeth, the clown, and that thing that accompanied the red light. I was exhausted, but sleep wouldn't come. Instead, I sat at my laptop searching for information about the Sentinel security building. Most of what I found was mundane property records, tenant histories, renovation permits. I was about to give up when I discovered an article from the Chicago Tribune archives dated 1963. The headline read, "Westbrook Asylum Fire Claims 37 Lives." A black and white photo showed a burned building, smoke still rising from the rubble. The caption indicated the asylum had been completely destroyed and the land remained vacant for almost 10 years before the current building was constructed. When I dug deeper, I uncovered disturbing information about the asylum. Reports of patient mistreatment, experimental procedures, and mysterious deaths. The fire had originated in the basement where they confined the most difficult patients. One account mentioned people hearing screams long after the building should have been empty. I printed everything I could find and placed it in a folder along with a small box of white chalk I'd purchased on my way home, remembering Robert's strange advice. I was exhausted and frightened, but something kept driving me forward. Sarah had discovered something important, and I needed to know what it was. When I arrived for my second night shift, the lobby was empty again. The cleaning crew had already departed and the overhead lights made everything intensely bright, but I knew that would soon give way to darkness and terror. I walked to the security office, my footsteps echoing in the empty hallway. The office looked exactly as I'd left it that morning, except for a fresh cup of coffee on the desk with a note beside it. "Good luck." Was all it said. Robert had expected my return, and that simple, friendly gesture provided some comfort. I sat in the chair and checked all the monitors. Everything appeared normal. Empty hallways, dark offices, quiet corridors. I positioned Sarah's notebook on the desk before me, along with the folder of research and the box of chalk. Then I retrieved the rule sheet and reviewed it again, even though I already knew every word by heart. By 11:45 p.m., I had formulated a plan. If the entities followed the same schedule as last night, I could predict their appearances. The man in the hat would materialize on monitor 3 at midnight. The knocking would commence at 1:30 a.m. Thomas Baker would appear around 2:15 a.m. The red light would activate at 4:15 a.m. I watched monitor 3 as midnight approached. My hands weren't shaking this time, and my mind was clear, despite my lingering fear. I wasn't entirely certain what I intended to do, but I knew I needed answers. At exactly midnight, the screen flickered as before. When the image stabilized, the man in the hat stood in the hallway, looking directly at the camera. His face remained mostly shadowed, but I could tell it was the same figure from last night. Instead of merely watching him, I opened Sarah's notebook to a blank page and positioned it on the desk facing the camera. I didn't know if he could see it or if this would accomplish anything, but it was worth attempting. For several minutes, nothing happened. The man simply stood there, regarding the camera. Then slowly, he took a step forward, something he hadn't done before. He took another step, drawing closer to the camera. I could see more of his face now, pale, gaunt, with deep eyes that appeared profoundly sad. He raised a hand toward the camera, fingers thin. The image on monitor 3 began to distort with lines of static across the screen. For a moment, I thought the monitor was failing, but then the static cleared and the man was gone. I checked the time. 12:15 a.m., exactly when he had vanished the night before. I looked down at Sarah's notebook, expecting to see the blank page I'd left open. Instead, the page was filled with strange symbols I didn't recognize. They resembled a cross between ancient writing and mathematical equations, arranged in a circle with smaller symbols inside. I flipped through the rest of the notebook, searching for any mention of these symbols, but found nothing that matched exactly. Sarah had drawn some similar marks in her later entries, but none with this specific arrangement. The hours passed slowly. At 1:30 a.m., the knocking started just like before. I remained at my desk, completely ignoring it. The woman with too many teeth appeared in the door's window again, her black eyes looking hungry, but I kept focusing on the symbols, attempting to understand them. At 2:13 a.m., Monitor 2 showed movement at the exterior door. Thomas Baker entered the building, walking the same way as before, moving through the lobby toward the security office. This time, I didn't grab my baton or attempt to intercept him. Instead, I waited with the symbols from the notebook ready. At 2:15 a.m., someone knocked softly on the door. 3 gentle taps, nothing like the violent pounding from the woman earlier. I opened the door to find Thomas standing there with his sunken cheeks and deep eyes that appeared even more unsettling up close. "You came back," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Most don't." "I need answers," I replied, stepping aside to let him enter. I closed the door behind him. Thomas moved to the desk, his gaze immediately fixing on the open notebook with the symbols. His eyes widened, recognition lighting his gaunt face. "She found it," he whispered, reaching out but stopping just short of touching the page. "Sarah actually found a way out." "What are these symbols?" I asked. "And what did you mean last night about the red light?" Thomas looked up at me, his expression shifting from surprise to something resembling hope. "How much do you know about this building? About what happened before it was built?" "I know it was constructed on the site of an asylum that burned down in 1963, I said, pulling out the folder of research. 37 people died in that fire. Thomas made a sound that might have been a laugh, but held no humor. 37 recorded deaths. There were others, patients whose existence was never documented. Experiments that were kept off the books. What does that have to do with what's happening now?" I asked. "We're all still here," Thomas said simply. "The entities you've seen, the man in the hat, the woman at the door, the one that comes with the red light, we're all souls trapped by the fire, bound to this place." I struggled to process what he was saying. "You're dead." "A ghost?" "Not exactly a ghost. Something between living and dead. Trapped in the moment of our deaths, forced to relive it night after night." Thomas gestured to the building around us. "Sentinel Security didn't build this place to keep things out. They built it to keep us in." "Why?" "What would they gain from that?" "Protection," Thomas said. "Power. The trapped souls create a kind of energy that the company harnesses. We're their security system, their watchdogs. The rules you follow aren't for your protection. They're containment procedures to keep us under control." The pieces started falling into place. The specific timing of the entity's appearances, the strict rules, the way the company seemed to expect night guards to encounter impossible things. "And Sarah?" I asked. "What happened to her?" She started to understand the patterns, the connections between us. She found symbols in the basement. Old protection markings from the asylum, but she realized they could be reworked. Thomas tapped the page of symbols. "These aren't just random markings. They're a key, a way to break the cycle and free the trapped souls." "Did Sarah use them to escape?" Thomas nodded. "She found a way out, not just from the building, but from the cycle entirely. That's why the company says she simply disappeared. She broke free and they couldn't admit that was possible." I stared at the symbols with new understanding. "And you want me to help free you, too?" "I want," Thomas began, but stopped suddenly, his head snapping toward the alarm panel. "It's coming early tonight." The red light began to pulse, turning the room crimson. The building started buzzing, making the floor shake. But the clock showed it was only 2:43 a.m., not 4:15 a.m. like the night before. "They know," Thomas said urgently. "They know you're trying to help me. Quick, get under the desk." I hesitated, but the genuine fear on Thomas's face convinced me. I ducked under the desk, clutching Sarah's notebook and the chalk Robert had told me to bring. The heavy wet footsteps I'd heard the night before approached the security office, but faster this time, almost running. The door didn't open. It burst inward, wood splintering as something massive forced its way through. From my hiding place, I could see Thomas standing firm. His outline grew blurry, his body transforming into that same dark smoke I'd witnessed before. But instead of dispersing into the vents, the smoke expanded, forming a barrier between me and whatever had crashed through the door. Through gaps in the smoke, I glimpsed fragments of the thing. A burned, mangled figure with skin that cracked, revealing glowing hot spots underneath. It moved all wrong, as though broken. Its arms and legs bending in ways they shouldn't. Its head constantly twitching and shaking. The smell hit me again. That awful combination of rotten chemicals that made my eyes water. The entity lunged at Thomas's smoke form, its clawed hands passing through him, yet still causing harm somehow. Thomas's smoke twisted and thickened, fighting back, but I could tell he was losing. The symbols. Thomas's voice came from everywhere and nowhere. Draw them now. With shaking hands, I pulled out the chalk and began copying the circular arrangement of symbols onto the floor beneath the desk. My initial attempts were clumsy, the lines wavering as the struggle intensified above me. I forced myself to focus, to make each mark as precise as possible. As I completed the final symbol, the markings began to glow with a soft blue light. The light spread from the circle, filling the room and pushing back the red pulsing alarm. The entity screamed in rage and pain, its burning body twisting as the blue light struck it. Thomas's smoke form seemed to strengthen from the light, becoming thicker and more solid. He surged forward, enveloping the burned entity. Both were drawn toward the center of the symbol I'd drawn, the blue light intensifying until it became a blinding white vortex. I covered my eyes, the light too brilliant to look at directly. When I lowered my hand, both Thomas and the entity were gone. The symbols on the floor glowed for a few more seconds before fading to ordinary chalk marks. The red alarm light turned green and the noise ceased. The sudden silence was deafening. I crawled out from under the desk, legs shaking as I surveyed the destroyed office. The door hung from a single hinge, completely broken. The desk was scorched in places, and the entity's foul odor still lingered in the air. As I moved to check the monitors, I noticed something on the floor where the symbols had been. A small folded piece of paper that hadn't been there before. I picked it up and unfolded it to find a message written in handwriting I recognized from Sarah's notebook. "If you're reading this, I'm free. You can be, too.